Alright, guys, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish the lecture that Ashton and I had started last week, but we weren't able to get through all of the notes. So I'm just going to read off of the lecture notes, but I will go ahead and post pictures of what I'm talking about so y'all can see a visual of it. But without further ado, I'll begin. Colonial empires of England and France. Jamestown was the central settlement in the newly established British colony of Virginia, and it was organized with the intention of increasing the shareholders' investments. Colonists from the Caribbean island of Barbados moved to the mainland of North America and settled in Carolina. And later we would see the division of Carolina into North and South, just like Virginia's regular Virginia and then West Virginia. And then far to the north of Carolina and Virginia, colonists that were searching for religious and economic liberties, they would settle in the region they called New England. And many of these people classified themselves as Puritans that hoped to avoid the Anglican Church. The New England colonies included the Plymouth colony and the Massachusetts Bay colony. Later, I guess disappointed or disgruntled colonists would found Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Haven. Okay. Mid-New Atlantic colonies included New York, that had been captured from the Dutch, Pennsylvania, a colony that was organized by Quakers, wanting to offer religious tolerance, and Maryland, who was intended for Catholics, who were not welcome in other North American countries, or colonies, excuse me. And then France had established colonial holdings in the New World. Their territories, identified as New France, would later become identified as Canada. The French would follow the St. Lawrence Seaway, and they would enter the Great Lakes region to establish trading posts with the native tribes. Spain's control of the Caribbean Sea was eroding as the French and British seized control of various islands. The French would take Cayenne, Saint Christophe, Saint Domingue, Domingo, I don't know, and others. Among the British's newly gained territories were Bermuda and Barbados. The Dutch the Dutch had the colony of New Amsterdam, but they would lose it to the British, who would change the name of it to New York. So what we know now as New York used to be New Amsterdam. New Amsterdam. Okay, mercantilism and colonial wars. British laws known as the Navigation Acts, they restricted other colonies or countries' trading rights with British colonies. Some viewed the acts, which damaged Dutch shipping and commerce, as a form of economic war. France and Great Britain became rivals in overseas empire building. The competition between the two European powers would develop into confrontations around the globe. France's defeat during the War of the Spanish Succession provided Great Britain with an advantage in establishing a global empire. Okay, moving on. People beyond borders. Okay. Many groups of people lived in the contested frontiers between empires, habitually crisscrossed their borders, or carved out niches niches within empires. Jews were eager participants in colonial trade and established closely linked mercantile communities scattered about many different empires. And the family ties and trust within these minority groups was a tremendous advantage in generating the financial credit and cooperation necessary for international commerce. Okay. And then we move on to the Russian Empire. So we go from Europe to Russia, the Mongol rule in Russia, and the rise of Moscow. So the Russians, they'd been under Mongol control since the 13th century, and they had forced the Slavic states to submit to their rule. They were expected to provide the Mongols with slaves and riches. Ivan III, who would also become known as Ivan the Great, he expanded Moscow's control eastward to the Baltic Sea and the Ural Mountains. He began to gain enough strength to provide the courage to stop the tributes to the Mongol Khan. He would declare himself and his successors as autocrats, having their own source of power. His highest ranking nobles were identified as boyars. Ivan would also claim the right of inheritance of the Byzantine Empire. Since Constantinople was under Turkish control, the Muscovite princes made themselves the heirs of both the emperors and Orthodox Christian seats of power. Ivan III's marriage to the daughter of the last Byzantine Empire enhanced his claim of inheritance. Ivan IV was the first to take the title of Tsar. The Tsar is spelled Tsar. Okay, next, building the Russian Empire. The Ivan IV, the successor to Ivan III, as the Roman numerals will imply, he would become known as Ivan the Terrible. He took the throne at the age of 3. His mother died when he was 8, and he was forced to endure the cruelty of the boyars. At the age of 16, he pushed aside the boyars and crowned himself Tsar. He defeated the Mongols and added their territory to his empire. After his wife, Anastasia Romanov, died, Ivan moved against those he conceived as his enemies and killed them along with their families. All commoners were now servants of the Tsar. Many peasants fled into the wilds and joined warrior bands known as Cossacks. Ivan then outlawed their peasants from leaving their masters. This began the system of serfdom within the Russian state. He would begin to tax the urban traders and artisans. The Russian people were then included into the Tsar's service. Ivan even made use of the Cossack armies to forge into the southeast. After Ivan's death, Russia entered what was called the Time of Troubles. A struggle for power led to Michael Romanov, the grandnephew of Ivan the Terrible, taking the title of Tsar. The Romanov family now had the hereditary right to the Russian royal throne. Alright, next up is Peter the Great and Russia's turn to the west. I'm just making sure I'm on the right page. Okay, so this is our last section of notes. So we're about to conclude our notes. So thank y'all for hanging with us for the last few days. I know it's been a pretty busy week, but we're just gonna go ahead and finish strong here. Peter the Great was interested in state building, and this is talking about Peter the Great and Russia's turn to the west. So Peter the Great, he was interested in state building and initiated a campaign to modernize Russia. The Russian leader took a trip to the west where he was impressed by the abilities of the Dutch and English. After suffering a military defeat against Sweden, Peter began to increase state power and military power. He sought foreigners who could begin improving the Russian state. The new military was able to defeat the Swedish army in Ukraine and brought Latvia and Estonia under Russian control. Peter had a desolate Swedish outpost transformed into a new modern city which would be called St. Petersburg. Thousands of peasants were put to work providing free labor for the Tsar. Many of Peter the Great's reforms were unpopular with the Russian population. The Tsar, he changed the inheritance rights of land to one son alone, cutting off other children from the family property. And the one son might have been the oldest son, and if you had daughters, they wouldn't get it. Even other sons, they wouldn't get it. It would be one son only. Alright, thank you for y'all's time. That's the end of the lecture, and I hope y'all have a great day.